Hi everyone, welcome back to Storytime Recaps. In this video, I'm going to recap one of the film from 2020, Anything for Jackson. Without any further, let's get started. An elderly couple is seen in their home casually conversing, wondering if a woman has already arrived. Then, they hear her outside and chase after her. Suddenly, the woman appears to be being dragged inside the house. The wife says, "My baby," and strikes the woman over the head. The husband then uses the elevator to take the woman upstairs, and the wife closes the front door. The woman is gagged and feels a child's hand on her face. She wakes up and sees a child greeting her. The wife calls out that she is awake. When her husband joins them, she introduces herself as Audrey and he is Henry. They tell Shannon, the woman, that they thought this would be the most appropriate way for her to disappear. After assuring her child that they won't harm her, Audrey sends Henry out to take the test. While outside, he contacts his wife to let her know that nothing can be heard outside as the woman begins to scream inside the house. Shannon then asks what they want from her. Audrey responds that they must bring their grandson back. When Shannon asks if the boy in the room is their grandson, since he has passed away, the old woman is shocked that she can still see him. Audrey turns on some music in the room and tells her that Jackson likes it, then leaves them alone together. Henry is thrilled when Audrey informs him that Jackson made an effort to communicate with the woman. He departs for work and meets Rory on the way there. Audrey returns with vitamins for the woman and goes through her belongings, taking her phone out of her pocket and some medicines. After Audrey left the room for a moment to get her glasses, the woman reaches for the phone, but Audrey stops her immediately. After unlocking her phone, Audrey uses social media to message a man to meet her later that day. Audrey then calls Henry at work to inform him that everything at his practice is finished. His assistant inquires about Shannon, one of his patients, and whether or not she will be returning soon since it's almost her due date. Henry then lies to get out of the situation. The elderly couple is shown in a flashback holding an old book and getting ready to bring a raven back to life. Audrey repeats an incantation, and the raven comes back to life. Though she assures Henry that she just needs confirmation, Henry doesn't like what she's doing. If the book is true, then in the present, as the two of them walk to a community center in an attempt to maintain appearances, they meet Ian, who informs them that he is unable to locate the book they already own. Audrey is unhappy, and he may report the incident to someone. They enter a Satanist gathering, where the chief priestess begins to pray to Satan as everyone wears their robes and lights black candles. In a different flashback, Henry is trying to calm Shannon down when her doctor informs her that she is pregnant. She is upset because she doesn't even know the father's name. He also texts his wife to let her know he has found the right woman, and he takes a picture of Shannon for her. The same picture is on the wall of the bedroom where Shannon is sleeping. When she wakes up, she coughs up blood and discovers that the couple has set up the room for a Satanist ceremony. She begs them not to proceed because they are already praying and inviting Satan into their home. They both cut their hands to offer their blood and spill it onto a heart. Shannon starts shaking, and they pray in Latin as the room comes to life. Eventually, they see Jackson in the room. He gestures toward the woman while Audrey continues to read, and then he vanishes. Shannon briefly sees a demon, and after it leaves, the couple checks on her and hears the baby's heartbeat. Henry isn't convinced that Audrey believes it is Jackson's heartbeat. When Henry awoke the next morning, Audrey was nowhere to be found in the bathroom. He glanced over to the area where a woman was flossing her teeth and continued to talk to her, thinking it was Audrey. Suddenly, his wife called and he realized that the woman in the bathroom was not Audrey. She kept flossing her teeth and they kept falling on the floor, then turned and walked toward Henry. Suddenly, Audrey entered the room and the woman vanished. Later, when he's working in his office, a police officer stops by to check on him. Detective Bello informs him that Shannon is missing and that she's tracking her movements. Henry tells officer that she canceled her appointment, but his assistant catches him in the lie that he saw her walking by his house the day she disappeared. The detective isn't bought off by Henry's shenanigans, and he calls Audrey to let her know what happened. She doesn't take the fact that he changed the plan lightly. When Audrey answers the door, there's a knock on the other side, where there's a ghost trick or treat. She dismisses the ghost and shuts the door, but then there's another knock. She opens the back door and the ghost appears there too right away. She shuts that door, and the ghost knocks on another door inside the house. She goes upstairs to call Henry, and when she looks down, it's the small ghost. After calling Henry at last, she tells him what's going on. He advises her to give the ghost her soul. She follows the ghost to the elevator, where it emerges changed into a massive version of itself. Later, Audrey is asked by Shannon why she had been screaming, and she responds that her daughter had come to see her. Shannon then moves on to ask Audrey what happened to her daughter. When Shannon realizes she is alone in the room, she tries to flee, but as she grabs for one of her handcuffs, she discovers a man suffocating beside her bed. She cries for Audrey as he gets up, moves around the room, and then discovers her. He then returns to her, crawls on top of her, and bites on her pregnant belly while she is at the door and unable to open it. But as soon as she does, a suffocating spirit starts to run at her. Henry then comes, preventing the ghostly manifestation, and both of them starts getting ready for bed as Henry assures her that Shannon will be okay because he stitched her up. Unaware of what they did, Audrey questions whether they made a mistake. In a flashback, Henry runs into Shannon outside his house. She is happy to be a mother and has overcome her fear. Back in the present, Henry goes to see Rory while Audrey is preparing to sedate Shannon. The two men talk outside, but the man insists on cleaning his driveway, so he turns on the machine in front of the house while Audrey and Henry quarrel inside. Audrey fears that they performed the ritual incorrectly and that Jackson isn't there. From the front yard, Rory yells out to them, telling them they did everything correctly and that Jackson will return. Suddenly, Rory inserts his head into the machine. Afterwards, Audrey enters the room to clean Shannon up. She takes off the handcuffs and puts on the restraints. Shannon asks if they'll kill her after they have the baby, but Audrey responds that their agreement was not to hurt her. As they converse, the room door opens, and Audrey tells Shannon that she is reminded of her daughter, who killed herself in the home elevator after being in the same accident as Jackson but didn't act immediately. As Henry is burying Rory in the woods, his phone rings. It's the detective who follows up with him, requesting to see him. He tries to get some information out of her, but she dodges his questions, telling him she'll meet him at the house in an hour. Back in the room, Shannon begs Audrey to allow her to be Jackson's mother so that they can care for him after they pass away. She promises to do anything they ask. When the doorbell rings, Audrey gags her once more and disappears, locking the door behind her. However, the door opens on its own, and Henry dashes home to find the detective waiting for him inside Shannon's room, where Audrey is handcuffed. The detective tells Henry to get on his knees as Shannon begs her to let her go, but the detective turns to her and kills herself. Henry takes Audrey out of the cuffs, and they remove the detective's body from the room. Henry buries her where Rory was buried. Audrey tries to explain Shannon's request to him the following day, but Ian knocks on the door and asks to see the book. They show him the book, and Henry tells them how he acquired it. When Audrey asks if he can read it, he replies that it has been written in a variety of languages and dialects and may be the oldest book ever discovered. When they inquire about the invocation spell, he instructs them to demonstrate to him exactly how they used it, and once they do, he claims that every ghost in purgatory will be searching for a host. He inquires about the host they used, and they take him to Shannon. They ask Ian if Jackson is there, and he responds that he can be, but that they must complete the ceremony by offering the mother as a sacrifice. Ian says he can carry out the ceremony provided they give him $110,000 and let him keep the book. He will conduct the ceremony the following day, but in order to keep the other spirits away, they must surround Shannon and themselves with rock salt. That night, both Henry and Audrey are in the room together. Shannon tells Henry about her plan for the baby, but he says she can't win a moral argument with him because he already made a deal with the devil. He also tells Shannon that Audrey was driving the car when Jackson died, but she couldn't remember Henry was doing everything for her. Suddenly, the ghost of the detective enters the room and commits suicide once more. While reading the book in his basement, Ian's mother calls him out for lunch. Furious, he gets up and leaves. When he gets to the house, the detective appears behind him in the bedroom. The others don't find this surprising since they know the detective has been there all night. Ian immediately begins to give the couple reading instructions. The detective then enters again, claiming that salt only slows them down, but that a sacrifice will stop them. As the investigator returns, Ian follows the instructions without shooting herself this time. And Henry steps outside. He measures the appropriate locations for various objects around the home, and he informs Henry that he must kill the mother right away because if he hesitates, they will all die back in the room. As Shannon tries to distract Audrey's attention from her pentagram drawing, Audrey goes outside to fetch some breakfast. Shannon escapes her bonds and soaks herself in water while acting as though she is giving birth, at which point Audrey enters and calls for Henry. While she is preparing Shannon, the two men enter. Ian disturbs the salt and begins reading from the book right away. Audrey worries that Jackson might be inside, and Henry keeps receiving messages from the cult's priestess. The pentagram begins to shine, and Ian declares that it is working. Henry then picks up the phone and hears the priestess telling him that Ian killed his mother and drew symbols on his house. Audrey is informed that something is wrong with Ian, but he is encouraged to carry on. Shannon escapes her restraints and grabs Audrey, threatening to cut her throat if Henry doesn't undo her legs. Both Audrey and Ian warn him against it, but Henry persists. Ian then kills Audrey, spitting blood at Henry and carrying on with the ceremony, all the while trying to free herself from the restraints and letting Audrey to die in Henry's arms. Suddenly, Shannon stabs Ian, and a laughing ghost enters and takes him away. Shannon can be heard screaming in the next room while she tries to escape. Abruptly, a controlling ghost arises behind her and advances toward her. She leaves, and Henry encourages her to forgive them. Something begins to emerge from Audrey's body at that very time, frightening the other ghost. Shannon runs away, seeing the giggling ghost before escaping with the other two. She then proceeds to open the door, but when the enormous ghost emerges outside, she slams it. Meanwhile, a creature has emerged from the bodies of Audrey and Henry. Shannon finds the keys in the kitchen, but the detective soon shows up and assures her that she will protect her. She then leaves the house, passing by Rory. However, as she looks up, she sees Jackson being taken away through the window. Shannon then drives away, but as she drives through the woods, she notices something on the road. Upon closer inspection, she realizes it's a pregnant woman, and she looks down to see blood on her belly. Thanks for watching, and remember to turn on your notifications to watch more movie recaps like this one.